Welcome to Sober and Lit,
the podcast for women who want to get sober, stay sober, and live a life that's way more lit than it ever was with wine.
We're your hosts, Ruby and Susan, two alcohol freedom coaches keeping it real with stories, tools, and zero judgment.
Whether you're sober curious or all in, you're in the right place.
Let's feel lit, alcohol free.
Welcome back to the Sober and Lit podcast. Hi, I'm Susan Larkin. I'm here with Ruby Williams, and we're excited to be here this morning to talk about a really, really important topic, which is what are blackouts? What's going on with your brain if you blackout drink? And some of the questions I asked myself were, if you blackout drink, what does that mean about your drinking? And so that feeling when someone says, do you remember what you said last night? And I had that with my husband. He'd be all mad at me in the morning and I'd be like, what did I say last night? Because I couldn't remember. And that's a blackout or a brownout. Like I remembered a lot of the evening, but I didn't always remember everything I said. So, especially if I was mean to my husband. So really a blackout isn't about having too much fun or just drinking too much. It's actually a neurological event in your brain. It means your brain has temporarily shut down. Alcohol has shut down part of your brain's ability to make new memories. And we're going to dig into the science around that and what's happening in your brain. But first, let me ask Ruby, did you ever experience blackouts with your drinking?
Yeah, this is such a good topic. We are not the experts here, but we have experiences like you were saying. So like if someone were to say, Ruby, were you a blackout drinker or a pass out drinker? I more resonate with passing out every night where I would fall asleep. But then again, I was living alone, watching TV. Maybe I wasn't making memories. Maybe I was a blackout drinker. It's hard to say, except for I know that in the mornings, I could remember some things like you were saying. I could remember part of the movie, maybe if I was watching a movie. But I know a lot of sober friends that are blackout drinkers. And I really want to talk about that difference between a blackout and just a pass out. So a blackout, like you said, Susan, involves memory loss. Despite you're conscious. Like my friend who was a blackout drinker, she said that everybody thought she looked normal. Like other people think you are acting completely normal. She was dancing or talking or ordering drinks or being a perfectly normal person, but your brain is not making the memories. So it just stops recording. Like if you have a recording system in your brain, you're normally awake and you're recording your memories. But passing out, on the other hand, it means you're just losing consciousness. You fall asleep. Like I drank so much that my body and brain would shut down just so it could start processing the alcohol. I would go into the deep sleep at that point. But I definitely, we were just talking before we started recording this. I definitely think it's a gray area. We'll put in another color. Like a gray area. Was I a pass out or a blackout? Hard to say. But I do know that the book by Sarah Hepola, it's a quit-lit book. It's called Blackout. It's a memoir. And that was the first time I really kind of got it, because the book starts out where she wakes up in the morning and she literally has no idea where she is. She remembers the night before having one drink. Think of that. You're at a bar, you have one drink. It's so scary for women, especially if you're going out. I mean, I just was thinking, how scary is that? She had one drink. She didn't remember anything else. She opens her eyes in the morning and she's in somebody's house, or I think it was a hotel room, some random hotel room. And I just, how scary is that? So how are you even making consent or having consent? Maybe you said yes to whatever, but you don't know.
Yeah. Well, your prefrontal cortex is not online. You are not making decisions based on your thinking brain. Your subconscious brain takes over. Like John Mulaney, who's a comedian, talks about, he was a blackout drinker. He talks about it in his routine where he says it's like your brain turns off, but your body soldiers on. So your body's out there doing stuff. And like you said, looking normal, but your brain isn't turned on. You're not with your thinking brain, right? How scary is that? Yeah. Wow.
And some people are saying like your personality when you're drinking, or you're saying true, real things. Some people have that belief. Like, I think it's a myth. I think when you're drinking, I don't know what you're going to, like, I didn't know. That was what was scary for me. I didn't know what was actually going to come out of my mouth. So I was like, I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm not going to text. I'm not going to go on social media, because I just didn't know. But yeah, so tell me about you. Would you say you were pass out, blackout, brownout?
Yeah, well, so a brownout is where you don't remember certain things. Towards the end of my drinking career, I would get into more fights with my husband. I never overdrank when I was out, very rarely. Like, there's a couple of weddings or a couple times when early on, when I was in my 30s, when we would go out in New York City or something, where I drank too much and in public. But again, like you, I was at home. So sometimes it's hard to tell, when we're at home. But I did know that my husband would wake up, we'd wake up in the morning, he'd be really ticked off at me. And he would be like, do you remember, and I would be like, I don't remember anything. I don't remember what I said. And honestly, no, what I said, I'm sure wasn't truth. It was from whatever, angry, or my subconscious toddler brain. It was like a toddler probably tantrum, so it wasn't truth from my prefrontal cortex thinking brain. It was all my parts acting out, it was all my insecurities or my frustrations or my resentments, coming out. And and I just would say, I'm so sorry. I don't remember anything. But then when that started happening, that really worried me. So that's where I really was like, okay, I've got to do something about my drinking, because this is not good that I don't remember those conversations, and they're, very damaging, and those damaging conversations to my relationships, but also the fact that I just didn't remember parts of the night. And what can happen with blackouts scientifically is, and this is really scary, is once you have one, or once you start to have some blackouts or brownouts, you are more susceptible to more and more of them with less and less amounts of alcohol. And that I did notice, because I would sometimes go, wait a minute, I only had like 3 glasses. How come now I don't remember that conversation?
And even the story, or the thing I shared about Sarah Hepela's book, one glass, that started happening to my friend too. And I just remember this other story. He was a man, a big man. And, he was a blackout drinker, and he said he would go to a bar and he would have one drink and think it was just a normal Friday night, going to have one drink with the guys. And the next thing he'd know, he was waking up in jail. And then people said that he would start fights.
But he didn't just have one drink. He just doesn't remember all the other drinks he had. Right. And your other friend too. Like, this isn't happening with one drink. It's that you have one drink that you remember, and then all the rest of the drinks you don't remember ordering.
Right. You're still
you
ordering
remember
drinks.
Going, shots, shot, right?
And then he would have to piece together his life, ask people what happened. Yeah. And for him, when he was drunk, he would get angry and start fights. So, I mean, it ruined his life. Then ending up in jail. So this is so serious. I'm so glad we brought this up.
Yeah. Well, so a blackout, again, like I said, I think in the beginning, it's a neurobiological event. Alcohol, the drug of alcohol, is affecting your brain. It's turning certain things on. It's turning certain things off in your brain. It's, and it's basically turning off, just in like layman's terms, it's turning off your ability to convert short-term memories into memory. Basically, you're not recording. It's like it turns off the recording device in your brain. The hippocampus, it affects your hippocampus. Alcohol disrupts your hippocampal activity, which is a part of your brain, and basically it's sort of like hitting the record, in our life, we're recording all these memories, and it's just like it hits stop on the record button, and your brain is not recording any more.
That is
memories.
Such a good visual. And I was just reading up on this, and that women often experience more severe effects from the same amount of alcohol compared to men. So blackouts can increase the risk of dangerous situations. I want to say that, accidents, assaults, we're making impaired judgment And that memory loss, unfortunately, is permanent. Like, there's no way to get it back. Did you ever see the movie The Girl on the Train? With Emily
I love
Blunt?
that book. Yeah.
So
I read the book.
Yes, I read the book first, and then I saw the movie. Obviously, I love books better, but she's so great. But so it's a book about this blackouts, memory, identity, addiction. And what I want to say is that you can't get the memories back.
They weren't recorded.
Yeah.
They're just not there.
Yeah, and then this is an interesting point I want to make is, so she had an ex-husband, right? Like a bad relationship with her ex-husband, and he was a gaslighter. I don't know if you understand. Mm-hmm. So gaslighting is like, and this happens to people that are blackout, brownout. Often, if you don't trust that person that you're with, and they're gaslighting, which means they make things up. They say lies. So since she never remembered, she was a blackout drinker, he would say, oh yeah, you did this, or you didn't do that, or this hole in the wall was from you, and make things up.
Yeah, that's scary.
And if you don't have a memory, it's just this whole, it's very scary.
Well, it's really scary around sexual assault for women, in my opinion, especially in college campuses or when you're out, young women out at bars and stuff. Like that whole idea of waking up and not knowing how you got there or who you were with or what you did the night before, like that is so scary. And that's scary part of my story at all. My drinking increased in my 40s when I was working at a stressful job. And most of my, like I said, over drinking occurred at home. And even when we say amounts and over drinking, it's different for every person. Like for me and my body, over drinking was like 3 or 4 glasses. Like that was too much for my body. And so, out in the world, people will go, oh, that's not bad. You don't have a problem, but it is a problem if it's resulting in passing out, brownouts, or blackouts, right?
Yeah.
And
and you're making a really good point that it's a different amount for everybody. And I've had clients that have said they were blackout drinkers from day one. They remember like being a teen and having their first beer or whatever and blacking out, like the first one. And then, I want to stress this though, if you start to have, some people it starts to come on slowly where you notice you're a blackout drinker. And again, it happens with less and less alcohol, and other areas of your brain and body are affected too, because I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but at the end of my drinking, we'll call it career, the end of the drinking, I would have like half a glass of wine and notice I couldn't see. My vision was blurry. Whoa. So it was starting to affect more and more and more, but I was the most scared about my brain and my brain health, that my memory, I felt like my brain was mush. I couldn't remember words. And like I wanted to talk about, or you did, Alzheimer's. And
well, there's studies now that any amount of alcohol use can lead to increased dementia, risk for dementia, especially early onset dementia. So that's been out there. There's been definitely posts like by Dr. Amen about that kind of thing. I mean, alcohol really, really is like a sledgehammer to your brain. So like there's, it is, and that's why as I continued to, drink, it may have started to lead to blackouts because there was damage, the alcohol use was damaging your brain. It is damaging your brain, period.
It is.
Yes. So, so they, studies show that there's a decrease of brain volume for people who drink, with regular alcohol use, in a decrease in white matter changes with people with recurrent blackouts or alcohol use disorder. And one of the things I wanted to, because I like to get all the research and the publications and really dig into the science and things that have been proven scientifically, evidence-based. And so this is all evidence-based. We're not just making this up. There's been studies on this, which also, just this as an aside, just kills me that these studies and this information, number one, aren't out there. The medical community isn't really bringing it forward about the dangers of drinking. And number two, right now they're making the new guidelines around alcohol, safe amounts of alcohol for the dietary guidelines. And is this information those guidelines, or are they just ignoring it? But anyway, that's an aside. But one thing
topic for another day.
Well, when you brought up, though, because there was in my research this was a point I wanted to make, and you brought up that people who blackout drank, or stories where blackout drank right from the very start, and blackout drinking is a sign of future alcohol use disorder. Yes. So if you were one of those people that blackout drank in college, and then now you're in your 50s or 40s and wondering why, you're struggling with alcohol, your brain is one of those brains that is more susceptible to alcohol use disorder, because, and that blackout drinking early on is a sign of that. And it's not your fault, right? It's not your fault. All of our brains are different.
And they're all
just like our bodies are different.
And our brains are acting normal, right? This is how your brain acts. I mean, it's just alcohol is the addictive substance. But real quick, you mentioned Dr. Amen, and I love, there's a YouTube video, which we'll put the link below, but it's something like 80,000 brain scans, I think is the title of the YouTube video. But it's all the brain science. He has scanned, probably hundreds of thousands of brains. And it actually, you can see in the brain scan of someone that drinks alcohol, it pokes holes in their brain, really, is what it looks like from the brain scan. This also can happen with other drugs, and also, of course, things like trauma to the brain, like a car accident, or if someone plays football or boxing. He scans lots of different types of brains, and it's so interesting that alcohol, it ruins your brain. I'm sorry.
Right.
There.
It does. Yeah. Because it alters all these neurotransmitters. And we've talked about dopamine before, but it also gives you this huge dopamine hit. So the dopamine surge reinforces the drinking behavior as your memory is shutting down. So it's like you get this reinforcement that drinking is good, I should do more of this, while you're also not remembering or not recording memories of the negative impact that it's having on your life. That's kind of scary, because all you're left with is, keep doing this. Yeah. And that heightened reward plus impaired memory can, lead to risk-taking and poor decision-making, because the heightened reward is drink, keep drinking, and then you make poor decisions, when you're under the influence. And one of the things you brought up, too, about dementia, increased risk of dementia. Let me tell you, my mother-in-law has dementia, and we were taking care of her, and every time, it's heartbreaking. She doesn't remember her life. I bring photo albums and we go and I sit with her, and she'll just look at them, and she doesn't remember who's in the photo. She recognizes herself at this point. Mm-hmm. It is heartbreaking. She doesn't remember me. She doesn't remember my husband. We tell her who we are, and then she's like, oh, yeah. And she's the sweetest, most beautiful woman. And it's just it is heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking for my husband. And alcohol use and how it affects your brain increases your likelihood or increases your risk of getting dementia. Yeah. Even especially early onset dementia, which is,
you guys,
so
we
scary.
don't want that. We don't want that. So hire a coach or join, get alcohol free. Then your brain can start healing. And that's what Dr. Amen says also. When you stop the behavior, he also has protocols and stuff, but you can heal your brain. Right. Our brain has neuroplasticity. It can grow and change. We can do things like meditation, and there's so many different things and like learning, and we have lots of ideas. But it's real quick, Susan, I just thought of something. We're on this planet, as far as I know, this one time, right? This is our life. And I started to do the math of, if you drink, say, every night, or that's your drinking at like 5 o'clock on, and say you'd normally be awake from say 5 to 10, and have your life, you're missing maybe 25% of your life if you're not making memories.
Wow.
25. Wow. So that's like saying, you're just going to take 25% of your life away. You're not going to remember what you're doing. And it's just so heartbreaking too. I remember this story from a client. She said she paid like $200 to go see, I think it was, I don't know, some concert. And because she's a blackout drinker, she was thinking about this concert for a whole year. And I think it was Taylor Swift, and like so excited and, you know, going to go with her daughter. And she had one drink. It's, again, it can happen after one or two drinks. She doesn't remember anything from the concert. Nothing. And that was like the biggest, you know, exciting thing to do. Yeah. So there's so many stories. Yeah.
Well, and so what we want to reinforce, though, is that this is not about a moral failing or any kind of weakness. This is science. This is neurobiology.
Exactly.
Okay. And it's understanding what's happening inside your brain and really getting this information. Again, like I said, this is not out there. Like, I didn't know this information until I started doing the research. And it's really frustrating that this isn't really common knowledge about how alcohol really affects your brain and your body. And, you know, here we are, women in our, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s, doing everything we can to age well, right? We're eating right. We're walking with our weighted vest so we don't have hip fractures, you know, so our bone density. And if we're drinking, we're putting ourselves at risk of losing our brain. We're doing brain damage, right, at the same time. So that's just crazy to me. I mean, really. But, you know, so a powerful step that you can take is just to start asking yourself, you know, if you are drinking to the level of a blackout or brownout or passing out, is why am I drinking to that level? You know, what am I trying to numb or escape? And what would it look like to care for myself differently, you know, and to make a step towards that kind of change, you know. Hopefully by listening to our podcast, you have learned some things, because like every episode we offer tactics and information science, you know, to get new information. And then our Feel Lit section, we talk about ways and things we can do to feel good in our body without using alcohol, right? And those things support us in our journey to change our drinking. So that leads me to this part of our podcast, which is to ask Ruby, what are you doing to feel lit?
What am I doing to feel lit? So lately, I had some time off recently, and I went to an art class, and I've been doing some art and creativity lately, and like reintroducing that into my life. And it was so fun. What I did was, I don't know if you've ever done this, Susan, but it's called like glass fusion. It was like a glass fusion class. And what I chose to make was it was about this big, which you'll have to watch YouTube, but just, it's a glass,
4 inches.
A glass nightlight. So it's like a flat, you know, a flat piece of glass. It was just so fun to I just like escaped into the world. All I had to do for 2 or 3 hours was cut the glass and create a design. And I just really got into my body. My creative spirit came out, and I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to have more often, at least once a month for sure, an art date with myself. I'm going to make a date with myself. Maybe friends will come, but it could be alone, where I either go to an art museum, or I take a class, or I just go ahead and get out my pens, or just, I want more creativity in my life. Every time I do like when you get to like the end of the year, which I can't believe we're coming to the end of the year, then you're like, what are you going to do this year? And I always be more creative or start doing more art projects. And it really can just take maybe having an art date with yourself, and you can do it too. And it really lights me up. I just love it so much. Yeah. Do you do some creativity in your life, Susan?
Not like art, but I love that. Like what I'm hearing you describe is like how you get into that flow state around creativity, around, you know, just being in the moment and just doing the art in that moment. And that creativity is part of what I teach in my coaching, is to find that thing where you get into that flow state. And that's part of real fun. That is part of what, you know, we think drinking is fun. That's faux fun. Real fun is when we are in that flow state, right? And creativity and art is really a part of that. Like I think I get in that flow state when I play pickleball. So it's not art necessarily, but it is, you know, an activity that is, brings me into that flow state. But I also, sometimes when I'm working on like my website and stuff, when I get all into the colors and everything, that's kind of artistic for me.
It is.
But and going to an art museum, we recently went to a museum in Spain, and it was beautiful to just,
I love it.
To look at the art and this paintings back from like the 1400s, the detail and the storytelling, because that's how they told stories, is through art. They back in those days, they didn't have a lot of books, and so there was especially a lot of religious art, around in Spain, around the Catholic Church. And it was so interesting and so beautiful. Yeah. So.
Well, I want to just reiterate what you said earlier, because I just want to stress, if you're drinking more than you intend or want, it's not your fault. You're not broken. And you are not alone if you're a blackout drinker. It's so many people. It's just not talked about that much. So I'm so glad we brought this topic up.
Yeah. If you're not remembering parts of your night, it doesn't have to be full on blackout. See, that's the thing. You go to meetings or you hear stories and you hear things like, oh, I woke up and I didn't know where I was. And you go, well, I'm not like that. Thank God. But then I would wake up and not remember conversations I had with my husband.
Exactly.
Is that any better? Like, I'm just saying, like, it's easy to compare. It's easy to, even if you're not a blackout drinker, learning how alcohol is affecting your brain and that alcohol use can lead to dementia later on, is scary. How it affects our brain. It is, a sledgehammer to our brain. It really is. And just that visual of, I always say, you may as well just take the bottle and clonk yourself over the head with it.
Yeah. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you so much. This has been a great episode.
Yeah, we just wanted to get this information out there because it's important. Our brain is important. Like Dr. Raymond says, I don't drink because I love my brain.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Brain love. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks so much for listening to the Sober and Lit podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps get the word out.
And remember, do something today to help you feel lit.
See you next week.